The video you are about to watch, at least I hope you're about to watch it, turned out to be the longest video I have ever made. And honestly, I really debated on whether I really wanted to stick my hat back in this ring again, or stick my my face in this vat of oil, however you want to call it. But you know, I decided that I would go ahead, based on some comments that I've had over the last couple of weeks on some other videos, and based on the level of sheer animosity and rage and turmoil and everything else I've seen, I thought I would go ahead and address this one more time. So what I did is I got in touch with the folks at Schrade, and I got them to send me one of the new hollow grind SCHF43s, formerly known as jess-x. And what we're going to do in this video is, amongst all the rambling and talking, we're gonna compare the chopping and batoning performance and stuff of this version versus the original with the saber grind, and we're going to do my standard knife test that I do on any knife I review on this new hollow grind model, see how well it performs. And also want to cover a few more points that have come up in the comments over the last few weeks. I quit answering most of those comments because I was saying the same thing over and over, and I just don't have time to type all that. But I do think there's some things that came up that I wanted to address. And as I edited the video, I realized, you know what, I don't know that I did a really great job of making a couple of the points I really wanted to make. It sort of sounds like I'm focusing on whether or not Schrade did something right or did something wrong. And I know people are going to accuse me of taking Schrade's side. I don't really try to take anybody's side. I'm just trying to take the side of logic and rationality. And that's really kind of the focus of why I wanted to make this video. As much about that as about this knife, and basically that some people are making comments and have opinions that don't seem to make sense in what I would consider a real rational world sense. One of those examples is there's a lot of cry out that, you know what, if this was intentional, then we can't trust Schrade. And I don't necessarily dispute that, but if it was a mistake, then they should recall these knives. I want to talk about that and give you my take on that, not from a Schrade versus non-Schrade, not from a I like Schrade or I'm trying to defend Schrade's standpoint, just from a sheer logical, rational business standpoint. And you can decide if you think I'm a two-bit sellout who's just trying to do everything he can to get a whole bunch of free budget knives that, by the way, they don't take at the grocery store, or whether I'm actually trying to think about this in a logical manner. That's up to you. But I really hope you'll stick around to the end, because I kind of go over all that, and we are definitely going to do probably the most extreme balance test on this knife that I've ever done on any knife. So you may want to stick around and see that. So anyway, I guess it's only fitting that my longest video yet has the longest intro yet, but that's what's coming up next here on Survival on Purpose. Welcome back to Survival on Purpose, your home for information and gear reviews related to camping, survival, and general preparedness for regular folks. My name's Brian. Thanks for joining me. So, I really don't have a tree growing out of my head. I know that is horrible composition. Let me just say first off the bat, thanks to the folks at BTI for sending me one of these new SCHF43s, formerly known as the jess-x, with the hollow grind, so I could test it out and do some of my normal standard knife testing on it to see how well it actually performs. Now, before we get started, let me just address a couple of things. And I don't have notes, I'm just doing it off the top of my head, but real quickly, if you haven't seen the other video I made, I'll put a link for that one right up here in the corner, and there'll be a link in the description too. But if you're not familiar with any of this, just a real quick recap, and I recapped it on that video, so I'm not even going to go into that much detail. Bottom line, Chris Tanner designed this knife as original with they call it the jess-x SCHF43. They designed it with a flat grind for either a mistake or on purpose or intentional or whatever. Anyway, the last shipment came out with a hollow grind, and Chris really was upset by that because his name is on it, and his name, as you can see, is still on this one, and it wasn't as designed. There's a bunch of videos out there showing the performance of this knife. He didn't feel like the hollow grind was going to be able to achieve the same performance, and he did a video and broke a bunch of tips on there. So bottom line, that is kind of where we're at, and that created an entire firestorm of animosity and hatred and drama towards Schrade. And because I've done a Schrade video every Saturday for the last 3 years, people somehow look to me like I'm the Schrade guy. I don't work for Schrade. Schrade doesn't pay me. They send me and lots of other people these knives at no cost to review and to show. And I've showed some bad ones. Mostly I like them because I like most knives. So there's that. Now, so I talked to the folks at Schrade, and I talked to Chris. They both told me essentially the same thing, maybe from a slightly different viewpoint, but they both seem to be pretty passionate about the subject. So, long story short, I made that video. I was answering comments, and it just got where, you know what? Obviously, there's people making the same things over and over. So I tried to post and pin a comment at the very top, kind of answering some of the common complaints / concerns / comments that were put out there. And then last week I did another Schrade Saturday video, as I do every Saturday, and a lot of comments on that video, which is about another knife, were actually about this knife and about this whole situation. So I thought, you know what? Why don't I just contact the folks at Schrade, BTI Tools now, ask them to send me one of these new ones with a hollow grind and just see how well it actually performs. Because a couple of comments that I got that really spurred this on, and I promise we'll get to chopping and whacking and banging on this thing in just a minute. Just bear with me a little more rambling. Had several people just completely call me everything but a child of God because I didn't review the knife that I was holding in that video. I didn't have it. The knife I was holding in that video was the original that I had with the flat grind, or saber grind, sorry, not flat grind. If I said flat grind before, it is a saber grind. So anyway, it's not a hollow grind. So they were like, you know, you didn't even review it. Like I stuck up for Schrade and this and that. So I said, you know what? I didn't review it because I didn't have it. I have a new one now, so we're going to do a standard review on it. Now I'll say this. I've had a lot of people say, I think Schrade should have recalled this knife. Well, I'm just going to tell you, if you'll stop for a minute, lose the emotion, and just think for a second. I think the number I heard was 4,000 units that they'd sent out with the hollow grind. So figure that these knives sell for somewhere around 50 bucks. So suppose their cost is even at 20 bucks. Say it's 25, half of that. That's $100,000, okay? Now, I don't know if it's reasonable to expect a business to essentially throw $100,000 in the garbage because it has a grind on it that they put on 90% of their other knives. So obviously they don't think there's anything wrong with a hollow grind. Now I get that this knife was advertised and promoted and videoed with a flat grind, but people change designs on things all the time. Whether it was intentional or a mistake, I'm not even going to get into that in this video because you know what? None of us really know for sure. It's a he said, she said. It's amazing to me that some people don't even listen to the whole story before they just go off. And they've immediately said, you know, of course it was intentional. We know it was intentional. I can see how it would be very easy for a knife factory that makes thousands and thousands of knives a day, probably, all with a hollow grind, to get a new design in, slap it in their assembly line, and put a hollow grind on it. You know, maybe that's what happened. I don't know. At this point, that's not even the point of this video. None of us can prove that. Bottom line is, I don't think it's realistic to expect them to throw $100,000 in the garbage can because they created a knife with a grind on it that they obviously, once again, think is a great grind because they put it on 99% of all their knives. So, I mean, just think about it for a second. People seem to think that because they're a big company, they got millions of dollars. I tell you what, man, 100 grand is 100 grand. I don't care if you got millions of dollars or not. So that's that's the way I'm looking at it. Whether or not they did it on purpose, I can't say. I don't think you can say. I don't think Chris certainly can't say for sure. None of us can say. We can assume, and you know what happens when you do that, right? I don't know if it was a mistake or not. I can see how it could be. I can also, quite frankly, see how, you know what, they could have said, absolutely, yes, they could have said, you know what, let's just save us a little money here because it costs more money to put that saber grind on there. And it'll be fine because we do these knives all the time with hollow grinds, and it'll be fine. And I think that finally Schrade did answer, respond to somebody on Facebook, and I thought it made a whole lot of sense that, you know what, they're treating this knife with the hollow grind just like they do any of their other knives. As long as it's not abused, they will warranty it like any of their other knives. So, right or wrong, I just don't think it's reasonable to expect them to drop 100 grand in the garbage because of the grind. Anyway, so I said I was going to be done with that, didn't I? Okay, now I really am. So anyway, here's the new one. Last thing I want to say before we do the testing on this is that Chris broke one, and it looked like one of these new ones, and said send it off to some people, and their anecdotal response was it looked like the heat treat was bad. But that was not from scientific testing. At least the last I heard, it was just people that knew about heat treat said it looked like it was bad. I don't know. Schrade told me they tested the Rockwell hardness and did all the normal tests they do on the knives, and it turned out fine. Who knows? You know what? The bottom line is we're going to test this one the way I normally test knives, which I don't do tip tests. I know that Chris broke this thing, stuck in a stump and broke the tip off of it. And because it is a hollow grind, and you can see there's no doubt That grind is not, as you see it, look at, see it tapers in right there, if I can get in the camera. So you can see that's some pretty thin right there. There's no doubt that concave area there would have metal in it if it were a saber grind. So no doubt the tip is not as strong. I'm not disputing that. There is no way this tip is as strong as the tip on a saber grind, period. So definitely that is the difference between this knife and the saber grind. Now, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I know a lot of people think I'm a sellout for Schrade because I don't just jump right on the bandwagon and say, oh, they should recall it. Oh, they're ripping people off. It's bait and switch. It's doing this. It's doing that. You know what? I just don't necessarily agree with that. If you think I'm a sellout, then I'm a sellout. I don't know what I'm getting for the selling out, though. I don't know what I'm selling out for because I'm not getting any money. I'm getting a bunch of budget knives sent to me to review that basically I give away to some Boy Scouts, or I pile them in a box to have my wife yell at me why I got all these knives in the way. It's not like I can take them to the grocery store. So it does give me some content for videos, which is a benefit, certainly. At least it helps me have something to put out. So if you think I'm a sellout for that, then so be it. But I don't do tip tests on knives typically. I've not done that on knives in the past, so I'm not going to do it on this one. Chris has already shown that these things will break. You can see very easily that the tip will break. So this tip is not as strong as the original tip. No arguments there. But we're going to do some normal knife stuff now with it. We will definitely put it on the balance, orientation, and rotation device there. And we'll just see how well this thing performs. And we'll go from there. So I've rambled way too long. I'm sorry. Let's get down to doing some knife stuff. Okay, I just chopped this whole thing here with the camera off. So it's chopped through one half of a log here. And you can see the blade's still fine. But also, this is the saber grind one. And I'm going to try to do a totally subjective, admittedly, comparison between chopping ease between these two knives. But let me just show you real quick, just so there's no discrepancy here. Here's the difference in the blades. So you can definitely see that the one here, this one, is the saber grind, and then here is the hollow grind. And you can see a big difference in the tips. You definitely can see the difference there, okay? So there's a lot more meat on this one. But what we're trying to figure out here is, does the saber grind inherently chop better than the hollow grind? I think it will because the design of it, just the geometry of the blade. But we're going to try again. I'll put this aside. And this is the new one. Okay, move this out of the way. And now since we got that already, we'll just chop through. We'll take the new one, chop through this big thing here. Man, it's hot out here too. We'll go ahead and do that. So. Okay, so that was pretty tiring. And I understand that I'm a little bit fatigued, to be honest with you. So that, I'm gonna try to take that into account as I try to compare the choppability of these blades. Let's see. No rest for the wicked and the righteous don't need it, right? Let's just see how well this one chops. It'll chop pretty quick if it's going to be better or worse. Okay, I can't honestly say that one was better than the other. Honestly, I can't tell the difference in a chopping effort required, chopping efficiency, anything else. Again, this is very, very subjective. I'm just trying to be as straight and honest as I can. They both chop okay. Okay, so next we'll do a little toning. We'll start with the hollow grind. Now I would certainly expect the flat grind to do better at batoning because it's more like a wedge, so it's going to split out ahead of it. Where the hollow grind would seem like it'd be more likely to get buried in jammed because it doesn't really have that wedge effect because of the concavity of the edge. But that's great. Okay, so we'll take this now. So you can see all that. Trying to see if I can find a decent. We'll just use this other half as a baton and beat the crap out of it. Okay, here we go. Not a good baton. Let's try this one here. This may not be because it's kind of busted out, but we'll see. Okay. So there's that. I don't know what kind of wood this is, but it's pretty hard wood. So that was the hollow grind. Yep. So let's try the flat grind. Chop it up. See if it does any better or different. Hard to say. Again, very subjective, I know. Okay. Let's try another test. Let's see. I don't have enough extra wood to do too many, so we'll do it this way. We'll take this one, lay it here, and see if we can chop it. This is a hollow grind. Okay, not bad. And this is the flat grind. We'll try the same thing. Gotta find one of the same pieces. This is the shorter one. It's the same, off the same part of the log. Get it started in there nice and even. Okay, so that's the saber grind, the original. Did just fine. So maybe try next some feathering, and we got back to the hollow grind. Try some feathers with a hollow grind on the corner on this whatever this wood is. It's not very feathery wood, but. I would actually expect the hollow grind to do better at this because hollow grinds are really more slicey. So I would be surprised if it didn't do better at this. But just trying to do everything I would normally do with a knife review, so that there's no perceived bias or anything here. This is what I do with every knife I review. So pretty decent. Show you these. Pretty decent. Little curls there. We'll bunch all those up together. Fat wood, I'm gonna usually check out some fat wood when I review something, so we'll go ahead and try that. Get this old dead stuff off, dry stuff off the outside. It oxidizes. Let's see if it'll scrape some fat wood. I think it will. This again is the new one for the hollow grind. Okay, so pretty good job there scraping. Okay, we're still working with the hollow grind here. I got the Schrade ferro rod out here. I'm gonna push these little fat wood shavings up here, and we'll see if we can get us a fire going. And what do you know? Works just fine. So the spine is really good on this knife as far as sharpness goes. Oh man, sorry, worked up a sweat. So, this again is, just so we're clear, is the hollow grind. See that? You can definitely see the hollow grind profile there. So far where we're at is, I did exactly the same test with this knife I've done with every knife that I review Schrade or otherwise, mostly because I'm just curious as if it is really as flawed a knife as many of the comments would indicate. And all I can tell you is I couldn't noticeably discern any difference in the choppability or the batonability of this blade shape versus the saber grind. Now I'll say logically and rationally, it would seem to me that a saber grind would definitely excel at batoning as far as splitting, because when you're splitting wood, all you're trying to do is open that gap up, and then basically you're forcing the wood apart, wedging it. Now cross batoning or chopping is totally different, because when you're chopping in, you don't have anywhere for that wood on the outside to go. When you're splitting something, you got room for that gap to open up till it eventually splits in two. When you're going cross grain and you're chopping into something, there's really nowhere for it to go. So when you're chopping, you got to pretty much make that gap on each side where it splits out. Anyway, a long story short, I couldn't tell a noticeable difference between either of them. If there's any test that I do normally do though that has the greatest chance to cause damage to a knife, it is the balance testing that I do with the balance, orientation, and rotation device here. That's a good opportunity for the handle to bang, the knife to bang, things to get broken. Anyway, my point is that if anything that I normally do has an opportunity or the greatest likelihood of causing damage, that's going to be it. I'll say I have thrown a lot of hollow grind knives at that balance, orientation, and rotation device there with no issues. So we're going to try this one with the SCHF43 non-jess-x. So let's just see what happens. And this is, by the way, I never really fell in love with this design to begin with, and probably because it does not lend itself to balance testing. I'll put it that way. But let's try it. There's one. You see, nothing problem, no problem. There's two, no problem. I keep hitting between the boards. Okay, we're gonna leave all the screw ups in on this one because there's no problem. Okay, that almost hit my coffee cup. That would have made me mad. Okay, I don't know how many times that was. You can see, finish is screwed like usually happens. You can see the blade, the tip is perfect. The blade edge is fine. So, let me wrap this up and give you my final thoughts on this thing. First of all, let me say right off the bat, I'm not saying that this knife is as good as the knife with the saber grind is. Although, for me, performance-wise, I couldn't tell a big difference. I couldn't tell anything noticeable enough to where it would make me say, oh, this is a piece of crap knife. There's no doubt that this tip is not as strong in a prying situation. I do not dispute that. Common sense tells you that. You can see the difference between the two tips. There's not as much metal there, plain and simple. I saw Chris break a bunch of them, okay? If I were Chris, I would not feel comfortable having the knife with my name on it in what I considered a substandard configuration, okay? Whether or not it is or not, it doesn't matter. Chris designed it a certain way, and so in his opinion, it's substandard, and I understand that because at least from a strength standpoint, I agree with that, okay? So I'm not faulting Chris for having issues, taking issue with the hollow grind, because there's no doubt that it's not the same knife that he designed, or that all the videos that were out there promoting this knife, it's not the same knife, okay? But I personally did not find a difference in performance doing all the knife stuff that I do. But again, definitely not as strong. So at the end of the day, I don't know what a good answer for this would be. I understand a lot of people think Schrade should just go ahead and recall these knives. Now, again, you're probably looking at 100 grand at least or more. And from Schrade's viewpoint, they think this knife is just fine for everyday knife stuff. And you know what? Based on what I've seen, you know, this is the first time I've got my hands on one of the new hollow grinds. But based on what I just did and what you just saw, I don't see any difference in performance in this and the original one, or any of the other Schrades that people have been so happy with for years. So I think what it boils down to is, you know, did they do this on purpose? And if so, You know, was that the right thing to do? Was that dishonest to them or whatever? And you know what? They told me it was a mistake. I can see how it would be a mistake, and there's people that don't agree with that. That's fine. There's people that are going to call, I'm sure I'll be called a sellout and all sorts of horrible foul names on this video also, because I dared to question the I don't know, the emotional, dramatic hatred suddenly towards Schrade. If as long as those comments don't contain profanity, then you can air them with the world. If they do, nobody's going to see them but me, and they'll be blocked out. I mean, you just wouldn't believe the names I've been called because I didn't jump right on the bandwagon and say, you know what, Schrade sucks, they did this on purpose, because I don't know that, and neither does anybody else. But people make that assumption, and they go to the extreme of disrespect and hatred and anger and volatility. And I'm telling you, I've been called everything again but a child of God, simply because I said, hey, you know what, I think it's at least reasonable that it's possible that it was a mistake, and I can understand them not recalling a knife that they've got 100 grand or so in, because it has a grind on it that they obviously think is a good grind, because they put it on daggum near every knife they make. If it was intentional, it was a design change, so they certainly wouldn't recall it. And if it was an accident, it's like, you know what, okay, we'll fix it next time, no big deal, because we put out a lot of hollow grind knives with no issues. So my point is, I can see their side and I can see Chris's side, and you know, it's unfortunate that things happen. Man, I said I was going to wrap this up. It's turned into a really long video. I'm sorry. Last thing, BTI tools. I have zero experience dealing with BTI tools other than the last couple of months. I will say that my contact with Schrade, Russell Taylor, who's one of the original Taylor Brands family, he's gone. Morgan Taylor is the guy there now. He's the last Taylor around, I think. I don't know how long he's going to be there, or if he's going to be there for long term. So I know that people are gone. I don't have any contacts at the new BTI company, so I may not do any more Schrade or Smith & Wesson videos after I run out of knives. You know what? I don't even care. They're not paying me. I'm not, you know, it doesn't matter. I'm not getting paid to make these videos. It's just good content for me that people like to watch. That's what it is. And honestly, there's been times in the past couple of years where it's been a really big stressor to get a Schrade video out, because I had other videos in the can, but I didn't have a Schrade one made in time, and I had to really try to get it done for Saturday. So it would really and truly be a big load off of my plate to abandon the Schrade Saturday. But I'm sticking with it right now. I'm the kind of guy that gives people the benefit of the doubt. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're not going to screw this up, and that I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that this was a mistake. You don't have to do that. I am. My choice. That's just the way I roll. So, and hopefully, if you're one of the people that was really dogging me out because I didn't review that knife that I was holding in my hand when I made the last video, well, it was the old one. There wasn't any point in reviewing it. This is a new one. I've done what I think is a standard, customary knife review that I do on every knife, and it honestly, it passed with flying colors. So there's that. I didn't break the tip off. I have no doubt I could if I tried, but I'm not going to try. There you go. I hope this has been helpful and not too crazy long. I know it's been long, and anyway, it is what it is. Thanks for watching Survival on Purpose. I put out a brand new video every Friday and every Saturday, and very often random videos through the week, and most of them are not usually this long. You can check out another one by clicking right over here. If you're not subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you click right down there in the right-hand corner and do that, so my kids can be really proud of Dad for getting one of those silver play buttons sometime really soon. I really appreciate the support. Once again, my name's Brian. You're watching Survival on Purpose. Remember, survival's not an accident, so be prepared, and I'll see you next time.